Hi, it's Isabel, your witch from Cleveland. I'm here to start the second part of the reading of the foreword for Women Who Run with Wolves, and I know you're seeing that backwards. I'm sorry. Have not learned how to edit these things yet, but I'm working on it. I've already cleared my space with the frankincense incense, and have all my candles lit, and have a little music going in the background. So we're gonna work on this, and I will finish the foreword tonight as soon as I can find my place, because my little handy dandy bookmark actually fell out, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but isn't it pretty? Yeah, it's gorgeous. I know. So I put another video out, a little kind of meditative ASMR kind of thing this morning. We went to the beach, and I spent about 10 minutes just recording the water and the sounds around me, so that you guys can maybe meditate with that, have it on a where it continuously loops, or however you want to do it, and get a good meditation in on just listening to the water and the sounds. So, with that being said, I am going to try to get on with this, if I can remember where I was. And I probably should have looked that up before I think I was on page 12. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and start on page 10, just because, yeah, it's 10 pages from page 10 on. So I'm just going to go ahead and start on page 10 and about halfway down and keep reading. All right, here we go. A healthy woman is much like the wolf, robust, chock-full, strong life force, life-giving, territorially aware, inventive, loyal, roving. Yet separation from the wildest nature causes a woman's personality to become meager, thin, ghostly, spectral. We are not meant to be puny with frail hair and inability to leap up, inability to chase, to birth, to create a life. When women's lives are in stasis or filled with ennui, E-N-N-U-I. I do not know this word, I have to look it up. It is always time for the wildish woman to emerge. It is time for the creating function of our psyche to flood the delta. How does wild woman affect women? With her as an ally, a leader, model, teacher, we see, not through two eyes, but through the eyes of intuition, which are many-eyed. When we assert intuition, we are therefore like a starry night. We gaze into the world through 1,000 eyes. The wild nature carries the bundles for healing. She gives everything a woman needs to be and know. She carries the medicine for all things. She carries stories and dreams and words and songs and signs and symbols. She is both vehicle and destination. To join the instinctual nature does not mean to come undone, change everything from left to right, or from black to white, or to move from east to west, to act crazy or out of control. It does not mean to lose one's primary socializations, or to become less human. It means quite the opposite. The wild woman has a vast integrity to it. It means to establish territory, define one's pack, to be in one's body with certainty and pride, regardless of the body's gifts or limitations, to speak and act in one's behalf, to be aware, alert, to draw on the innate feminine powers of intuition and sensing, to come into one's cycles, to find what one belongs to rise with dignity, to retain as much consciousness as possible. The archetype of the wild woman and all that stands behind her is a patroness to all painters, writers, sculptors, dancers, thinkers, prayer makers, seekers, finders, for they all are busy with the work of invention, and that is the instinctive nature's main occupation. As in all art, she resides in the guts, not in the head. She can track and run and summon and repel. She can sense, camouflage, and love deeply. She is intuitive, typical, and normative. She is utterly essential to woman's mental and soul health. So what compromises the wild woman? From the viewpoint of our typical psychology, as well as ancient tradition, she is a female soul. Yet she is more. She is the source of the feminine. She is all that is instinct of the worlds, both seen and hidden. She is the basis. She is the basis, We each receive from her a glowing cell that contains all instincts and knowing needed in our lives. She is life, death, life force. She is the incubator. She is intuition. She is farseer. She is deep listener. She is loyal heart. She encourages humans to remain multilingual, fluent in the languages of dreams, passion, and poetry. She whispers from night dreams. She leaves behind the terrain of a woman's soul of coarse hair and muddy footprints. Good Lord. These fill women with longing to find her, free her, and love her. She is ideas, feeling, urges, and memory. She has been lost and half forgotten for a long, long time. She is the source and the light and the night and the dark and the daybreak. She is the smell of good mud and the back leg of a fox. The birds which tell us secrets belong to her. She is the voice that says, this way, this way. She is the one who thunders after injustice. She is the one who turns like a great wheel. She is the maker of cycles. She is the one we leave home to look for. She is the one we come home to. She is the mucky root of all women. She is the things that keep us going on when we think we're all done for. She is the incubator of the raw little ideas and deals. She is the mind which thinks us. We are the thoughts that she thinks. Where is she present? Where can I feel her? Where can I find her? She walks in the deserts, the woods, the ocean, cities, in the burrows, in castles. She lives among queens, among campanistas, in the boardroom, in the factory, in the prison, in the mountain of solitude. She lives in the ghetto, at the university, in the streets. I'm sorry, I still need to get new glasses. She leaves footprints for us to try for size. She leaves footprints wherever there is one woman who is fertile soil. Where does she live? At the bottom of the well, in headwaters, in the ether before time. She lives in the tear, and in the ocean. She lives in the cambia of trees, which pings as it grows. She is from the future and from the beginning of time. She lives in the past and is summoned by us. She is in the past and keeps a chair at our table, stands behind us in line, drives ahead of us on the road. She is in the future and walks backward in time to find us now. She lives in the green, poking through the snow. She lives in the rustling stalks of the dying autumn corn. She lives where the dead come to be kissed and the living send their prayers. She lives in the place where language is made. She lives on poetry and percussion and singing. She lives on quarter notes and grace notes, in a cantina, in a centina, in the blues. She is the moment just before inspiration bursts upon us. She lives in a faraway place that breaks through to our world. People may ask for evidence, for proof of her existence. They are essentially asking for proof of the psyche. Since we are the psyche, we are also the evidence. Each and every one of us is the evidence of not only wild woman existence, but of her condition in the collective. We are the proof of this ineffable human Newman. Our existence parallels hers. Our experiences of her within and without are the proofs. Our thousands and millions of encounters with her intraphysically through our night dreams and our day thoughts, through our yearnings and inspirations, these are the verifications. The fact that we are bereft in her absence, that we long and yearn when we are separated from her. These are the manifestations that she has passed this way. My doctorate in the ethno-clinical psychology, which is the study of both clinical psychology and ethnology. The latter emphasizes the study of the psychology of groups and tribes in particular. My postdoctoral diploma is in analytical psychology, which is what certifies me in the Jungian psychoanalyst. Which is what certifies me as a Jungian psychoanalyst. My life experience is cantadoral Lisamondo, poet and artist, informs my work and my adolescents equally. There's a word. These, wow. Sometimes I ask to tell what I do to my consulting room to help women return to their wildest natures. I place substantial emphasis on clinical and developmental psychology, and I use the simplest and most accessible ingredient for healing: stories. We follow the patient's dream material, which contains most plots and stories. The analysis, physical sensations, and body memories are also stories, which can be read and rendered into consciousness. Additionally, I teach a form of powerful interactive trancing that is proximate to Jung's active imagination. This also produces stories that further elucidate the client's psychic journey. We elicit the wildest self through specific questions and through examining tales, legends, and mythos. Most times we are able, over time, to find the guiding path from fairy tale to that instruction that contains all the instruction a woman needs in her current psychic development. These stories comprise a woman's soul drama. It is like a play with stage instructions, characterizations, and props. The craft of making is the important part of the work we do. I seek to empower my clients by teaching them the age-old crafts of the hands. Among them is a symbolic art of talisman making. I cannot pronounce las ofrendas and retablos. These being anything from simple ribbon sticks to elaborate sculpture. Art is important for us ceremonies. Art is important for it ceremoniates. Okay, I'm going to say it that way. The seasons of the soul. For a special or tragic event in the soul's journey. Art is not just for oneself, not just for the maker of one's own understanding. It is a map for those who follow after us. As you might imagine, work with each person is customized in the extreme. For it is true that people are made of one of a kind. But these factors remain constant in my work with people, and these are the fundamental for all humans' work before them today. My own work as well as yours. The craft of questions, the craft of stories, the craft of hands. All these are the making of something, and that something is soul. Anytime we feed soul, it guarantees increase. I hope you will see that these are tangible ways to soften old scar tissue, balm old wounds, envision anew, therefore restoring old skills that make the soul visible in a down-to-earth way. In down-to-earth ways. The tales I bring here to elucidate the instinctual nature of women are, in some cases, original stories, and in other cases, are distinct literary renderings that I have written based on those particular ones given in my keeping by my, I cannot read that. It's written in another language, I can't read it. The old ones of my family. Those whose oral traditions have been unbroken as far back as we can remember. A few are written documents of my own first-hand encounters, some from time passing, and all from the heart. They are presented in all faithful detail and archetypal integrity. It is with the permissions and the blessings of the 3 living generations of familial healer-tellers who understand the subtleties and requirements of story as healing phenomena that I carry these forward. Additionally, here are some of the questions I pose in my adolescence and others to whom I offer counsel in order for them to remember themselves. I also detail for you some of the craft, their experimental and the artful play that assist women in retaining the numen of their work in conscious memory. All these help to bring about convergence with the precious wildish self. Stories are medicine. I have been taken with stories since I heard my first. These have such power. They do not require that we do, be, act anything. We need only listen. The remedies for repair or reclamation of any lost psyche drive are contained in these stories. Stories engender the excitement, sadness, questions, longing, and understanding that spontaneously bring the archetype, in this case the wild woman, back to the surface. Stories that are embedded with instructions which give us about the complexities of life. Stories enable us to understand that the need for and the ways to rise a submerged archetype. The stories on the following pages are the ones out of hundreds that I've worked with and pored over for decades, and that I believe most clearly express the bounty of the wild woman archetype. Sometimes various cultural overlays disarray the bones of stories. For instance, in the case of the Brothers Grimm, I was just talking about this with my son. Among other fairy tale collectors of the past few centuries, there's a strong suspicion that the informants, the storytellers of the time, sometimes purified their stories for their religious brothers' sakes. Over the course of time, old pagan symbols were overlaid with Christian ones, so that the old healer in the story became the evil witch, and a spirit became an angel. An invitation. Wait a minute. Invitational veil or cowl became a handkerchief, or a child named Beautiful, customary name for a child born during the solstice festival, was renamed Churchmerch, sorrowful. Sexual elements were omitted. Helping creatures and animals were often changed into demons and boogies. This is how many women's teaching tales about sex, love, money, marriage, birthing, death, transformation were lost. It's how fairy tales and myth were This is how fairy tales and myths that explicate ancient women's mysteries have been covered over, too. Both old collections of fairy tales and mythos exist today, but have been scoured clean of the scatological, the sexual, the perverse, as in warning against the pre-Christian, the feminine, the goddesses, the territory. I don't know that word. I gotta look that up. The medicines for various psychological malaise, and the directions for spiritual raptures. But they are not lost forever. I was given as a child many of what I know to be unvarnished, uncorrupted themes of the stories for of old. Uncorrupted themes of stories, of the stories of old, many of which I bring into this work. But even story fragments as they exist today can foreshadow the shape of an entire story. I poked about in what I playfully call fairy tale forensics and paleomythology, even though as its heart, reconstruction in a long, intricate, and contemplative endeavor. Okay, when such would be effective, I use various forms of exigence, comparing leitmotifs, which taking anthropological logical and historical inferences into account forms both new and old. This method in part reconstructs from ancient archetypal patterns learned through my years of training in analytical and archetypal psychology, which preserve and study all the motifs and plots in fairy tales, legends, mythos, in order to apprehend the instinctual lives of humans. I gain it and assist from templates that lie in the imaginal worlds, the collective images of the unconscious, and those drawn up through dreams and non-ordinary states of consciousness. A final polish might be gained by comparing the story matrices with archaeological evidence from the ancient cultures themselves, such as ritual pottery, masks, and figurines. Simply put, in fairy tale locution, I spend much time breaking the ashes with my nose. I have been studying archetypal patterns for some 25 years, and myths, fairy tales, and folklore from my familial culture for twice as long. I have learned a vast body of knowledge about the bones of stories and know when and where the bones are missing in a story. Through the century, various conquests of nations by other nations and both peaceful and forceful religious conversions have covered over or altered the original core of the old stories. But there is good news. For all structural tumble down and existing versions of tales, there is a strong pattern that will still shine forth. From the form and shape of the pieces and parts, it can be determined from good accuracy that has been lost from the story, and those missing pieces can be redrawn accurately, often revealing amazing understructures which begin to heal woman's sadness that so much of the old mysteries has been destroyed. It is not quite so. They have not been destroyed. All one might need, all that we might ever need, is still whispering through the bones of the story. Collecting the essence of the story in a constant paleontologic endeavor. The more story bones, the more likely the integral structure can be found. The more whole the stories, the more subtle twists and turns of the psyche are presented to us, and the better opportunity we have to apprehend and evoke our soul work. When we work with the soul, she, the wild woman, creates more of herself. As a child, I was lucky to be surrounded by people of many old European countries and Mexico. Many members of my family, my neighbors, my friends, have recently arrived from Hungary, Germany, Romania, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Serbo-Croatia, Russia, Lithuania, and Bohemia, as well as Jalisco, Michoacan, Juarez, and many of the villages at Mexico, Texas, Arizona borders. They and many others, Native Americans, people of Appalachian, and Asian immigrants, and many African American families from the South came to farm, to pick, and to work in the ash pits and steel mills, the breweries, and in domestic jobs. Most were not educated in the academic sense. Yet they were intensely wise. They were the bearers of a valuable and almost pure oral tradition. Many of my family and neighboring people who surrounded me, who survived forced labor camps, displaced person camps, deportation camps, and concentration camps, were the storytellers among them that had lived a nightmare version of Scheherazade. Okay. Sorry, it took me a second. Many had their families' lands taken. They had lived in immigration jails, had been patronized against their wills. From these rustic storytellers, I first learned the tales people tell when life may turn to death and death may turn to life at any moment. Because these transmissions to me were so filled with suffering and with hope, when I later grew old enough to read fairy stories printed in books, the latter seemed curiously starched and iron flat in comparison. As a young adult, I migrated west toward the Continental Divide. I lived amidst loving Jewish, Irish, Greek, Italian, African American, and Alsatian strangers who became kindred spirits and friends. I've been blessed to know some of the rare and old Latino communities from the southwest United States to Trapas and Truchas, New Mexico. I was fortunate to spend time with Native American friends and relatives from the Inuit in the north, from the Pueblo and Plains people of the west, to the Nahuas, Lacandonas, Tiha. I'm not going to pronounce these. And okay, thank you. In Central and South America. I've traded stories with sister and brother healers at kitchen tables and under grape arbors, in hen houses and dairy barns, and while patting tortillas, tracking wildlife, and sewing the millionth cross stitch. Been lucky to share the last bowl of chili to sing with gospel women so as to raise the dead, and sleep under the stars in houses without roofs. I've sat down by the fire or dinner or both in Little Italy, Polish town and hill country, Los Barrios, and other ethnic communities throughout the urban Midwest and Far West, and most recently traded stories with Spiritus, Bad Ghost, with Man Grill Friends in the Bahamas. I have been double lucky that whenever I've gone, the children, the matrons, the men in their prime, and the old coots and crones, the soul artists have crept out of the woods, jungles, meadows, and sandhills to gale me with caws and cavils, and I too with them. There are many ways to approach these stories. The professional folklorist, the Jungian, the Freudian, or other sort of analyst, the ethnologist, the anthropologist, the theologian, the archaeologist, each has a different method, both in collecting tales and the use to which they are put. Intellectually, the way that I developed my work with stories was through my training in ethical and analytical and archetypical psychology. For more than a half a decade during my psychoanalytical education, I studied amplification of light motifs, archetypal symbology, world mythology, ancient and popular iconology, ethnology, world religions, and interpretation. Viscerally, however, I come to stories as a canadora, a keeper of the old stories. I come from a long line of tellers, old Hungarian women who might as easily tell while sitting on wooden chairs with their plastic pocketbooks in their laps, their knees apart, their skirts touching the ground, or while wringing the neck of a chicken. Old Latin women, and questionistas, old Latin women who stand robust of breast, hips wide, and cry out the story ranchera style. Both clans storytell in the plain voice of women who have lived blood and babies, bread and bones. For us, story is a medicine which strengthens and arights the individual and the community. Those who have taken on the responsibility of this craft and are committed to the Newman behind the craft, are direct descendants of and immersed in ancient community of holy people, troubadours, bards, griots, cantadoras, cantors, travel poets, bums, hags, and crazy people. I once dreamt I was telling stories and felt someone patting my foot with encouragement. I looked down and saw that I was standing on the shoulders of an old woman who was steadying my ankles and smiling up at me. I said to her, No, come stand on my shoulders, for you are the old and I am the young. No, she insists. This is the way it is supposed to be. I saw that she stood on the shoulders of a woman far older than she, who stood on the shoulders of a woman even older, who stood on the shoulders of a woman in robes, who stood on the shoulders of another soul, who stood on the shoulders. I believe the old dream woman about the way that it was supposed to be. The nature of telling stories comes from the might and endowment of my people who have gone before me. In my experience, the telling moment of the story draws its power from the towering column of humanity, joined one to the other across the time and space, elaborately dressed in the rags and robes of nakedness of their time, and filled to the bursting with life still being lived. If there is a single source of story and a Newman of story, this long chain of humans is it. Story is far older than art and science and psychology, and will always be the elder in the equation, no matter how time passes. One of the oldest ways of telling, which intrigues me greatly, is the passionate trance state, wherein the teller senses the audience, be it an audience of one or many, and then enters a state in the world between worlds, where a story is attracted to the trance teller and told through her. The trance teller calls on El Duende, the wind that blows soul into the faces of listeners. The trance teller learns to be physically double jointed through the meditative practice of story, that is, training oneself to undo certain psychic gates and ego appengers in order to let the voice speak, the voice that is older than the stones. When this is done, the story may take any trail to be turned upside down, be filled with porridge and dumped out for a poor person's feast, be filled with gold for the taking, or chase the listener into the next world. The teller never knows how it will all come out, and that is the least half of the most magic of the story. This book is the telling of the ways of the wild woman archetype. To try and diagram her, to draw boxes around her psychic life, would be contrary to her spirit. to know her as an ongoing process, a lifelong process. That is why this work is an ongoing work, a lifelong work. So here are some stories to apply to yourself as soul vitamins. Some observations, some map fragments, some little pieces of pine pitch for fastening feathers to trees to show the way, and some flattened underbrush to guide the way back to the underground world, our psychic home. Stories set the inner life in motion, and this is particularly important where the inner life is frightened, wedged, and cornered. Story greases the hoist and the pulleys. It causes adrenaline to surge, shows us the way out, down or up, and for our trouble cuts us a fine wide door and previously blank walls. Openings that lead into the dreamland that lead to love and learning, that lead us back to our real lives as knowing, wildish women. Oh, excuse me. Stories like Blackbeard bring us news of just what to do about a woman's wound that will not cease its bleeding. Stories that, like Skeleton Woman, demonstrate the mystical power of relationship and how deadening feelings can return to life and keep loving once again. The gifts of the old mother Death are to be found in a character of Baba Yaga, the old wild hag. The little doll who shows the way when all seems lost raises one of the most of The little doll who shows us the way when all seems lost raises one of the lost womanly and instinctual parts to the surface once again. Vasilisa the Wise. Stories like La Loba, a bone woman in the desert, teach us about transformation function of a psyche, about the transformation function of a psyche. The handless maiden recovers the lost stages of an old initiation rite from ancient times, and as such offers a timeless and lifelong guidance for all years of a woman's life. It is our brush with a wild woman that drives us not to limit our conversations with humans, not to limit our most splendid movements on the dance floor, nor our ears only the music made by human-made instruments, nor our eyes to be taught beauty, but our bodies to improve sensations, nor our minds to those things we all agree upon already. All these stories present the knife of insight, the flame of a passionate life, the breath to speak what one knows, the courage to stand what one sees without looking away, the fragrance of a wild soul. This is the book of women's stories held out as markers along the path. They are for you to read and contemplate in order to assist you forward for your own natural one freedom. You're caring for self, animals, earth, children, sisters, lovers, and men. I'll tell you right now, the doors of the world of the wild self. I'll tell you right now, the doors of the world of the wild self are few but precious. If you have a deep scar, that is a door. If you have an old story, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you almost cannot bear it, that is a door. If you learn for a deeper life, a full life, a sane life, that is a door. That is me. The material of this book was chosen to embolden you. The work is offered as a fortification for those on their way, including those who toil in different inner landscapes, as well as those who toil in and for the world. We must strive to allow our souls to grow in their natural ways and to their natural depths. The wildish nature does not require a woman to be a certain color, a certain education, a certain lifestyle or economic class. In fact, it cannot thrive in an atmosphere of enforced political correctness, or by being bent into old, burnt out paradigms. It thrives on fresh sight and self-integrity. It thrives on its own nature. So, whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, a woman-loving woman, a man-loving woman, or a God-loving woman, or all the above, or are all the above, whether you are possessed of a simple heart or an ambitions of the Amazon, whether you are trying to make it to the top or just make it through tomorrow, whether you are spicy or somber, regal or roughshod, the wild woman belongs to you. She belongs to all women. To find her, it is necessary for women to return to their instinctive lives, their deepest knowing. So let us push on now and remember ourselves back to the wild soul. Let us sing her flesh back unto our bones. Shed any false coats we have been given. Don the true coat of powerful instinct and knowing. Infiltrate the psychic lands that have once belonged to us. Unfurl the bandages, ready the medicine. Let's return now, wild woman, howling, laughing, singing up the one who loves us so. For us, the issue is simple. Without us, wild woman dies. Without wild woman, we die. For true life, we must both live. That is the end of that. That is the end of the foreword. The first chapter is, The Howl, Resurrection of the Wild Woman, La Loba, the Wolf Woman. I am actually going to read this and go over some of the words that I have a hard time pronouncing. So try to get those better pronounced before I do any more reading. because some of the words I haven't used in a while or haven't used at all. And I had a hard time getting through them, and it got a little frustrating for me. But I hope that you understood what I was saying and that it was clear enough that you got it. If you want, I suggest maybe getting a copy of this yourself, reading it to yourself, read it with me, go follow along with me. If you have any comments, you have any questions, you have anything that you want to know, maybe something you think I should know, please leave a comment. Please like the video, share the video. Just come join it. Come join us in our reading and finding our true selves and our witchy selves. And I will have many more trips to the beach, trips to the park, things that I am doing. Right now I'm repainting all my furniture in my living room. So I'll show you how everything turns out when it's done. And I'm still trying to get everything together for my bedroom. I mentioned that in a video before that I wanted to work on my bedroom. I'm still trying to get everything together for that. So that will be a project. And basically decluttering and bringing more of the presence into my household, into my home, that makes me happy and makes me comfortable. And I think this is something that all of us should do, which our homes are our oasis. It's our place away from everyone else and everything else. And it should reflect who we are, not who everyone else is. So, and the wolf is, in fact, my spirit animal. My spirit, well, I don't know about spirit animal, my spirit guide. And so being that, I'm really loving this book so far. Like I said, I read it a long time ago. My mother had classes where she spoke about these things, and it was very spiritual and all of that, but I never really, because I had young children and a husband and a home and everything, I really didn't dig into it, which I probably would have had a healthier, better life if I had. But I did what I thought I was supposed to do and not what I should have done for myself, and probably would have ended up better for my children in the long run. So the next reading, I'm going to try to do the next one next Saturday. We'll do half the next chapter. I will try to get some few other things in during the week. Maybe do a tarot reading. I'm not very good at it. I'm just learning it, so bear with me. But we will be doing it. And I thank you so much for coming along with this journey with me. Even if there's only a couple of watchers, I feel blessed that you're there. Thank you. Blessed be my brothers and sisters. Until next video. Bye-bye.